My sister told me to stay quiet at the will reading, so I waited until dessert to slide the addendum across the table. The December rain hammered against the windows of Rossi's Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago as I adjusted my tie and checked my watch for the third time in 5 minutes. At 62 years old, I had spent 38 years as a Chicago Police Department detective, investigating everything from petty theft to organized crime, but nothing in my career had prepared me for the family drama that was about to unfold over linguine and family secrets. My sister Patricia sat across from me at the corner table, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her wine glass, while she surveyed the restaurant with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent the last 15 years climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious downtown law firm. Patricia had insisted on this dinner meeting exactly 1 week after our father's funeral, claiming she wanted to discuss family matters in a neutral setting away from the emotional weight of Dad's empty house. What she really wanted, I suspected, was to control the narrative about our father's will and ensure that I understood my place in the family hierarchy she had constructed during the years when my police work kept me busy with cases while she focused on building relationships and managing what she called the family's financial interests. If this story is touching your heart, please comment below where you're watching from, give this video a like, and subscribe to our channel because we truly help families going through these difficult situations. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories of overcoming adversity and finding strength in the darkest moments. Our father, Anthony Benedetto, had been a hard-working union electrician who had immigrated to Chicago from Sicily in 1962 with nothing but a toolkit and an unshakable belief that honest work and family loyalty were the foundation of a meaningful life. He had built a modest electrical contracting business that employed neighborhood men and supported our family comfortably, though never lavishly, throughout our childhood in the tight-knit Italian-American community on the Northwest Side where everyone knew everyone else's business and family reputation mattered more than individual wealth. Dad had always been proud of both his children, bragging to his cronies at the local coffee shop about Patricia's law degree and my detective shield with equal enthusiasm, but I had always suspected that he felt a special connection to my choice of public service over Patricia's pursuit of corporate success. During family gatherings, he would tell stories about the neighborhood beat cops who had helped him navigate American bureaucracy when he was a young immigrant, and he often expressed admiration for people who chose to protect their community rather than simply accumulate personal wealth. Patricia, however, had spent the last decade subtly positioning herself as the family's financial advisor and decision-maker, gradually taking over Dad's bookkeeping, insurance policies, and investment decisions under the guise of helping an aging parent manage increasingly complex financial matters. She had convinced Dad to update his will 3 years earlier, ostensibly to ensure that his assets would be protected from taxes and distributed efficiently, but I had always wondered whether her legal expertise had been used to advance her own interests rather than simply preserve the family's modest wealth. The formal reading of Dad's will had taken place the previous Tuesday in Patricia's law firm conference room, a sterile environment of polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Chicago River. Patricia had orchestrated the entire event with professional efficiency, arranging for her colleague to read the document while she sat beside me wearing the black suit and somber expression that had become her trademark during the weeks following Dad's death from the heart attack that had taken him suddenly while he was working in his garage workshop. According to the will that was read that day, Dad's house, business, and most of his savings had been left to Patricia, with the explanation that her legal and financial expertise made her better qualified to manage the family's assets and ensure their preservation for future generations. My inheritance consisted of Dad's tools, his 1987 Chevrolet pickup truck, and a modest savings account that contained approximately $15,000, along with what Patricia described as sentimental items that reflected my father's appreciation for my service as a police officer. Patricia had presented this distribution as entirely logical and fair, pointing out that she had been managing Dad's finances for years, and that her legal background made her the obvious choice to serve as executor of his estate. She emphasized that Dad had been concerned about protecting his assets from potential lawsuits or financial difficulties that might arise from my dangerous profession, and that leaving the bulk of his estate to her was simply a practical decision designed to preserve the family's wealth rather than any reflection of his feelings about our respective contributions to his life. During the will reading, Patricia had repeatedly stressed the importance of maintaining family harmony and avoiding any disputes that might damage our relationship or create legal complications that could diminish the value of Dad's estate. She had specifically asked me to avoid raising questions or concerns during the formal proceedings, suggesting that any issues could be discussed privately later, and I had reluctantly agreed to remain silent while the lawyer methodically read through the various bequests and legal provisions. However, something about Patricia's overly rehearsed presentation and her insistence on controlling every aspect of the proceedings had triggered the investigative instincts that had served me well during nearly 4 decades of police work. The way she avoided making eye contact when discussing Dad's reasoning for the asset distribution, combined with her unusual nervousness during what should have been a straightforward legal procedure, suggested that there might be more to the story than the official version she was presenting to me and the lawyer. After the will reading, I had spent several days thinking about conversations I had shared with Dad during the months before his death, particularly our discussions about family fairness and his concerns about Patricia's increasing focus on material success rather than the values that had guided his own life. Dad had often expressed worry that Patricia's corporate career was changing her perspective on family relationships, making her view everything through the lens of financial advantage rather than love and mutual support. More troubling were Dad's comments about feeling pressured by Patricia to make financial decisions that didn't align with his own instincts about treating his children equally. He had mentioned feeling uncomfortable with some of the legal documents Patricia had asked him to sign, but had trusted her expertise and assumed that her recommendations were genuinely in the family's best interests rather than calculated to advance her own financial position at my expense. These memories, combined with my professional experience in detecting deception and hidden agendas, convinced me that I needed to conduct my own investigation into Dad's estate planning and the circumstances surrounding the creation of his final will. Using contacts from my police career, I was able to access public records and trace the history of legal documents that Dad had signed during his final years, looking for patterns or inconsistencies that might reveal whether Patricia had manipulated him into distributions that contradicted his true wishes. What I discovered during this unofficial investigation shocked me and confirmed my worst suspicions about Patricia's role in shaping Dad's estate planning. The records showed that Dad had actually created 2 wills during the 3-year period before his death, with the first version distributing his assets equally between Patricia and me, reflecting the fair treatment that had always characterized his approach to parenting and family relationships. The second will, which had been presented as Dad's final wishes during the formal reading, had been created just 8 months before his death, during a period when he was recovering from minor surgery and relying heavily on Patricia for assistance with daily activities and financial management. The timing and circumstances of this revision suggested that Patricia had used Dad's temporary vulnerability to pressure him into changes that favored her interests, while he was not fully capable of understanding the long-term implications of the decisions he was making. Even more damning was my discovery of a handwritten addendum to the original will, a document that Dad had apparently hidden in his workshop toolbox and forgotten to share with Patricia during her management of his legal affairs. This addendum, written in Dad's distinctive handwriting and dated just 2 weeks before his death, expressed his regret about allowing Patricia to convince him to change his will and his desire to restore the equal distribution that had been his original intention. The addendum specifically stated, "I made a mistake listening to Patricia about changing my will. She convinced me it was for tax reasons and family protection, but I can see now she was thinking about her own benefit more than fairness to both my children. I want Michael to know that I intended for him and Patricia to share everything equally, because that's what a father should do when both his children have made him proud in their own ways." Dad had also written about his regret over allowing Patricia to manipulate his trust and exploit his lack of legal knowledge to create an unfair advantage for herself. Patricia is smart with legal things, but she forgot that being smart should be used to help family, not to take advantage of family. Michael has spent his life protecting other people, and he deserves to be protected by his own family, not cheated by his sister, who should know better. The addendum included specific instructions for restoring the equal distribution of assets and expressed Dad's wish that both his children would remember the values of fairness and mutual support that he had tried to teach them throughout their lives. He had also written about his disappointment in Patricia's willingness to prioritize financial gain over family loyalty, noting that her behavior reminded him of the greedy landlords and corrupt officials he had encountered as a young immigrant trying to build an honest life in America. Armed with this evidence of Dad's true final wishes and Patricia's manipulation of his trust during his vulnerable final months, I decided to confront her during our dinner at Rossi's restaurant, giving her an opportunity to acknowledge her deception and work with me to implement the equal distribution that Dad had actually wanted. I hoped that presenting the addendum in a private setting would allow us to resolve the situation without legal proceedings that would damage our family relationships and create the kind of public scandal that Dad would have hated. Patricia had chosen Rossi's specifically because it was Dad's favorite restaurant, a family-owned establishment where he had celebrated every important milestone and where the staff had known our family for decades. She apparently thought that the sentimental setting would make me more receptive to her arguments about accepting the will as written and moving forward without challenging her inheritance of the majority of Dad's assets. Throughout dinner, Patricia maintained her facade of grieving daughter and responsible executor, speaking about Dad's memory with practiced emotion while subtly reinforcing her narrative about the will's fairness and Dad's rational reasons for trusting her with the family's financial legacy. She talked about her plans for investing Dad's savings and maintaining his house as a family gathering place, presenting herself as the natural heir to his role as family patriarch and financial decision-maker. However, as we reached the dessert course and Patricia began to relax, confident that she had successfully convinced me to accept the situation without challenge, I quietly reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew the envelope containing Dad's handwritten addendum. I placed it on the table between us without saying a word, watching as Patricia's expression changed from smug confidence to confusion and then to growing alarm as she recognized Dad's handwriting. "What is this?" Patricia asked, though her suddenly pale complexion and trembling hands suggested that she already suspected what the document contained and understood that her carefully constructed deception was about to collapse. "This is what Dad really wanted," I replied, keeping my voice calm despite the anger I felt about her betrayal of family trust and manipulation of our father's vulnerability. "He hid it in his toolbox, probably because he didn't trust you enough to tell you about it directly after he realized how you had used his trust to cheat me out of my fair inheritance." Patricia read the addendum in silence, her face cycling through various expressions of shock, anger, and calculation as she processed the implications of Dad's written confession about regretting the changes she had pressured him to make. When she finished reading, she looked up at me with the same cold, professional expression she probably used during hostile legal negotiations, already formulating arguments to minimize the document's significance. "This doesn't change anything," Patricia said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence and authority. "The official will was properly executed and witnessed according to legal requirements. This piece of paper isn't legally binding because it wasn't properly notarized or witnessed, and Dad's handwriting could be questioned by any competent attorney who wanted to challenge its authenticity." Her immediate resort to technical legal arguments rather than any acknowledgement of the moral and ethical issues revealed by Dad's addendum confirmed my worst assessments of how thoroughly her corporate career had corrupted her understanding of family relationships and personal integrity. Rather than expressing remorse about manipulating Dad's trust or concern about honoring his true wishes, she was already calculating legal strategies to protect her ill-gotten advantages. "You're right about the legal technicalities," I acknowledged, "but you're missing the point entirely. This isn't about what will hold up in probate court. This is about what kind of person you've become and whether you're willing to do the right thing now that you know how Dad really felt about the way you manipulated him during his final months." I explained that my police experience had taught me the difference between legal guilt and moral guilt, and that Patricia's technical ability to defend her inheritance didn't change the fact that she had betrayed Dad's trust and violated the principles of fairness and family loyalty that had guided his entire life. I pointed out that Dad's addendum provided clear evidence of his regret about allowing her to pressure him into unfair distributions and his desire to restore the equal treatment that had been his original intention. Patricia's response revealed the full extent of her transformation from the sister who had once shared family values into someone who viewed every relationship through the lens of personal advantage and legal maneuvering. She argued that Dad had been elderly and confused during his final months, suggesting that his addendum reflected diminished mental capacity rather than genuine regret about the will changes she had orchestrated. Dad wasn't thinking clearly toward the end, Patricia claimed, ignoring the fact that the addendum was lucid, detailed, and consistent with the values Dad had expressed throughout his life. He was grieving for Mom, dealing with health problems, and probably influenced by pain medication that affected his judgment. The official will represents his rational decisions made with proper legal advice, not emotional reactions to temporary circumstances. Her willingness to diminish Dad's mental capacity in order to protect her financial interests demonstrated how completely she had abandoned any pretense of family loyalty or respect for our father's memory. Rather than acknowledging that the addendum reflected Dad's genuine feelings about fairness and family relationships, she was prepared to argue that he had become incompetent in order to preserve her inheritance. The confrontation that followed was painful but necessary, as I explained to Patricia that her behavior had destroyed any possibility of maintaining a loving sibling relationship based on mutual respect and shared family values. I told her that I was prepared to contest the will in probate court, not because I needed Dad's money, but because I couldn't allow her manipulation and betrayal to go unchallenged when Dad had clearly expressed his regret and desire for fair treatment. Patricia initially tried to negotiate some kind of compromise that would give me additional assets while allowing her to retain the majority of Dad's estate, apparently believing that she could by my silence and cooperation without acknowledging the fundamental dishonesty of her actions. When I made it clear that I wanted the equal distribution Dad had originally intended, she became angry and defensive, accusing me of being ungrateful for the inheritance I had received and selfish for challenging arrangements that would benefit the entire family's long-term financial security. "You don't understand the bigger picture," Patricia argued, falling back on the same condescending tone she had used during the will reading. "I have the legal knowledge and financial expertise to manage Dad's assets properly, while you've spent your entire career on a police officer's salary without ever learning about investments, tax strategies, or estate planning. Dad understood that leaving everything to me was the smart way to preserve the family's wealth for future generations." Her argument revealed the arrogance and sense of superiority that had motivated her manipulation of Dad's trust, as she clearly believed that her professional success gave her the right to override family fairness and Dad's original wishes about equal treatment. She seemed genuinely convinced that her financial expertise justified taking advantage of Dad's vulnerability, and that I should be grateful for whatever inheritance she deemed appropriate for someone of my supposedly limited understanding. I responded by pointing out that Dad's addendum specifically rejected her arguments about financial expertise, noting that he had come to understand that her professional knowledge was being used to advance her own interests rather than to serve the family's collective welfare. I emphasized that Dad's immigrant experience had taught him to value fairness and integrity over financial optimization, and that his final written wishes reflected these fundamental principles rather than Patricia's calculations about investment returns and tax efficiency. The dinner ended with Patricia angrily declaring that she would fight any legal challenge I might bring, confident that her professional connections and understanding of probate law would allow her to protect her inheritance regardless of Dad's true wishes. She accused me of trying to exploit family tragedy for personal gain and suggested that my police career had made me suspicious and paranoid about normal family financial planning. However, over the following weeks, as Patricia consulted with the state attorneys and began to understand the potential complications that Dad's addendum might create for her inheritance, her attitude began to shift from defiant confidence to nervous calculation. Her lawyers apparently informed her that handwritten documents, even without formal witnessing, could carry significant legal weight when they demonstrated clear intent and were supported by other evidence of the deceased person's true wishes. More problematically for Patricia, my investigation had uncovered additional evidence of her manipulation, including emails and text messages between her and Dad during the period when she was pressuring him to change his will. These communications revealed a pattern of emotional manipulation and financial pressure that supported Dad's claims in the addendum about feeling coerced into decisions that contradicted his values and original intentions. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and expensive, but they ultimately vindicated Dad's true wishes and exposed the full extent of Patricia's betrayal of family trust. The probate court ruled that Dad's addendum, combined with the evidence of Patricia's manipulation, created sufficient doubt about the validity of the revised will to justify restoring the equal distribution that had been his original intention. During the court proceedings, several family friends and neighbors testified about conversations they had shared with Dad during his final months, in which he had expressed regret about allowing Patricia to pressure him into financial decisions that didn't reflect his values. These testimonies painted a picture of an elderly man who had been gradually manipulated by a daughter who used her professional expertise to exploit his trust and vulnerability. The judge's ruling included sharp criticism of Patricia's conduct, noting that her legal training should have made her more aware of the ethical issues involved in pressuring an elderly parent to make financial decisions that primarily benefited her own interests. The court emphasized that family relationships should be governed by principles of mutual respect and fairness rather than professional advantage and legal maneuvering. Patricia's reputation within the legal community suffered significant damage as news of the probate case spread among her colleagues and clients. Her willingness to manipulate her own father's trust and exploit his vulnerability for financial gain raised questions about her ethical standards and professional integrity that affected her career prospects and standing within the firm where she had spent years building relationships and credibility. More importantly, the legal battle destroyed any possibility of maintaining a sibling relationship based on love and mutual respect. Patricia's anger about losing the inheritance she had obtained through manipulation, combined with her resentment about the damage to her professional reputation, created a permanent rift between us that has never healed despite occasional attempts by other family members to mediate our differences. 3 years after the probate case was resolved, I used my share of Dad's inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for children of police officers and first responders, knowing that Dad would have approved of using his money to support families who dedicated their lives to public service. The scholarship program has helped dozens of young people pursue higher education and build careers based on service to their communities, rather than purely personal advancement. Patricia, meanwhile, left Chicago and moved to Denver, where she joined a different law firm and started over professionally in a city where her reputation hadn't been tainted by the family scandal. We haven't spoken since the final probate hearing, and I have no expectation that our relationship will ever recover from the damage caused by her betrayal of Dad's trust and her willingness to prioritize financial gain over family loyalty. The house where Dad had lived for 43 years was sold as part of the estate settlement, with the proceeds divided equally between Patricia and me according to his original wishes. I used my portion to buy a smaller house in the same neighborhood, staying close to the community where Dad had built his life, and where his memory is still honored by the friends and neighbors who remember his integrity and generosity. Dad's tools, which had been specifically left to me in both versions of his will, remain in my garage workshop where I use them for home improvement projects and repairs that keep me connected to the practical skills and work ethic that he had tried to teach both his children. Every time I pick up one of his carefully maintained hammers or screwdrivers, I'm reminded of his belief that honest work and family loyalty were more valuable than any amount of money or professional success. The addendum that exposed Patricia's manipulation is now framed and hanging in my home office, not as a symbol of victory in a family dispute, but as a reminder of the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult and painful. Dad's handwritten words continue to guide my decisions about family relationships and serve as a testament to the values that he maintained throughout his life despite the challenges he faced as an immigrant building a new life in America. Our story has become a cautionary tale within our extended family and neighborhood community about the dangers of allowing professional success and financial concerns to override the fundamental principles of fairness and family loyalty that should govern relationships between people who claim to love each other. Dad's willingness to acknowledge his mistake and document his true wishes has inspired other elderly family members to be more careful about estate planning and to resist pressure from children who might prioritize inheritance over genuine care and respect. The scholarship fund that bears Dad's name has become his lasting legacy, helping young people pursue careers in public service and community protection while honoring the values of integrity and dedication to others that guided his own life. Every year when we award scholarships to deserving students, I'm reminded that Dad's true wealth wasn't measured in the money and property he accumulated, but in the positive impact he had on his community and the principles he passed down to those who truly understood his message. If this story has touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to comment below and let us know where you are watching from, as well as your thoughts on family dynamics like this. Every perspective matters, because stories like these remind us that while families may face struggles, challenges, and even heartbreak, there is always an opportunity for healing, connection, and growth. By sharing your own reflections, you not only add to the conversation but also create a ripple effect of encouragement for others who may be experiencing something similar. When you engage, whether it's through commenting, liking, or subscribing, you are helping us build a space where families can feel less alone and more supported. Many people silently carry burdens within their homes, and often just hearing that someone else understands can provide an enormous sense of relief and hope. This channel is more than a platform for stories. It's a community where resilience, compassion, and solidarity take center stage. Your support allows us to continue creating and sharing content that uplifts, inspires, and shines a light on the very real challenges that families go through. We believe that even in the most difficult circumstances, there are lessons to be learned and strength to be found, and together, by engaging with these stories, we can remind one another that no family has to navigate their journey in isolation. So please, If this message resonates with you, don't hesitate to leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you're not just supporting us, you're standing with countless families around the world who find courage and comfort in knowing that they are part of a wider circle of understanding and care. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for helping us continue to share these powerful stories of resilience and hope.